Hello, good people of the world. My name is Bianchi, and today we're gonna make weird sounds like this, and even this. I will go in depth on all the techniques involved in making those kind of sounds, and I will also analyze the theory behind them because I'm a nerd. Also, I will be referring to other artists and content creators from whom I have taken most of the techniques that are part of what they have called noise layering, asymmetrical wave shaping. So what is distortion? As our Lord and Savior Wikipedia says, in signal processing, distortion is the alteration of the original shape of a signal. In communications and electronics, it means the alteration of the waveform of an information-based signal, such as an audio signal representing sound. So usually this is an unwanted effect in communication because it, again, alters the shape of your sound, and so it's basic informations. But in music, it can add texture and interest to a certain sound. So there are multiple ways in which you can change the shape of your sound and therefore its frequency content, but the one that includes most of them is called wave shaping. So wave shaping is the process of altering the waveform of a sound by changing its input signal and output signal in a non-linear way. Put it more simply, as the input signal changes, the output signal does so in a different way, therefore altering the shape of the wave of sound. So this variation can be defined by a mathematical function called the transfer function in an XY axis, where on the x-axis we have the input signal and on the y-axis we have the output signal. As the transfer function changes from its default position, the wave changes its shape and therefore new content is added to the sound, as I will show you right now with a handy-dandy operator producing a simple sine wave that, as we change the shape of a transfer function, changes its shape and it sounds quite different from the original. A wave shaper can be symmetrical if both sides of the shape are changed in the same way, and asymmetrical if one side of the wave changes differently from the other. As I will show you right now, this will give a much more gritty sound to our sine wave. There is a comprehensive video made by a content creator called Seb that you can watch, and I highly suggest you watch it if you're interested in all the in and outs of wave shaping and the different sounds that you can achieve by using this powerful device. But wave shaping is not the only way to distort our sounds. Another way to do that is called noise layering, and even though this is not technically a distortion, it achieves the same kind of result. Basically, as we distort the sound over a certain value, higher and higher harmonics are added to it, and at a certain point they start to resemble noise, as I will show you right now, using the same sine wave as before, driven into a saturator. As you can see on the spectrogram, there are higher and higher harmonics here, and this is much more easy to hear and see if we use, again, a wave shaper, and we drive the fuck out of it. Let me bring the output down so you don't become deaf. There you go. Watch all this noise. So if we layer sine with noise, we are basically tricking our brain into thinking that this is distorted because it's the same result we reach by driving it inside of a really heavy distortion. There is a super handy Ableton stock plugin called Erosion that does exactly that, and traditionally it was used to add grit and texture to basses and other aggressive sounds, and you can hear that the result is really similar to what we heard before with the distortion. So finally, we've reached the meat of the video. I will show you all the different iterations of distortion that will bring us to what I've called the noise layering and asymmetrical wave shaping, which is to me a much more modern and textured way to distort sounds than all the other ways that I know. So we'll start with the simple sine wave that you can see here. It's a normal sine wave with added harmonics in operator, just to give it more weight. So the first type of distortion is the one with the noise layering using erosion, as we heard before. You may hear that it sounds more cohesive with the bass sound and more connected to it in a certain way. You can hear that as the sound speeds down, the noise flutters with it. So this is a trick that I've stolen from Mr. Bill. And if you don't know him, please subscribe to his site because it's a goldmine for sound designers. What he does is, sorry, it's really nested in here. What he does is he ring modulates the noise. So here I have an operator that is just white noise. Okay, if I solo it, you can hear it. He ring mods this noise using kilohertz ring modulator and uses the main sub as the modulator for the noise. So basically what it's telling it is telling the noise to follow the shape and the envelope and the fluctuations of the sub. And that's why you hear this kind of flapping in the low end that it's really, really tight, in my opinion. The second type of distortion that I want to show you uses a particular type of wave shaping that is called wave folding. The artist that I've taken this idea from is called Copycat. Also, if you don't know him, please listen to his music because it's one of the most aggressive and dirty sounding music that I've ever heard in the best way possible. And this sounds like this. Let's compensate the value. Like it's similar to the first one, but it's much more piercing. So what it is basically wave folding. That is a particular type of wave shaping where the transfer function is just a really fast sine wave. And as you drive your sound inside of it, it basically turns into noise. And what Copycat does, and it's really interesting, he lets part of the sub through, and then he rectifies the wave by distorting it just half of the time, basically, with the symmetry knob. So the second wave folder is just, let me default it. Okay. It's just used to distort part of the sound more than the other. And this gives it a really gritty type of bite, I'd say. And again, this is ring modded as before, but because the noise comes from the sub itself, is less important than with the erosion kind of distortion. It just makes it tighter. Okay, third type of distortion. Now it starts to become interesting to my ears. So what it is basically noise layering as before with the erosion, but this time using a plugin. Sorry, this is a paid plugin called Texture that does the exact same thing that erosion does, but it allows you to import your own noises or sounds to it. What I usually do when I want to achieve this kind of noise or texture, I usually import noises that come from idea jams or mud pies that I've done during the years. So like I have a handful of those that you can hear now. So here I have my imported sample, and I usually use random or granular because they tend to mask the looping point of the sample that you do not want if you want this kind of smooth noise. I'll let you hear it. It's all the way wet. Without the ring modulation, basically you're hearing this noise. I usually fuck with it quite a bit by EQing that quite a lot and lowering the pitch, because I like the sound of noise at low pitch with all the high information boosted through an EQ, because without it, it sounds super muddy and not really interesting. But as you boost the high noise, you can hear all these kind of flapping that I really like. When this is layered with the original sub and, as usual, ring modded, it is similar to the erosion one, but it's much more textured. And compared to the wave folder, which is really high, it's less piercing and much more, I'd say, gritty, for lack of a better word. So finally, we've reached the new type of distortion that I want you to hear, which is the noise layering asymmetrical distortion. And as you may have noticed, is basically all the techniques that I've shown you before in one big effect chain. Starting out, we had the texture plugin that has the pre-made noise imported in it. And this time I have the mix knob not all the way to the right, so it's not completely wet because I want part of the sub to pass through. And the reason for that is basically we're using these as the wave folder of the second type of distortion made by Copycat. And we're gonna trunk that inside of another wave folder that we're gonna use to rectify the sound. It makes it, again, tighter and more gritty. Then an EQ to cut out lows because we just want the noise structure of it, and a slight boost in the highs because I like, again, noise being pushed in the high frequencies. And this gets ring modulated as usual. And altogether, it sounds like this. So to me, this sounds much more modern and unpredictable compared to all the other type of distortion, especially the erosion one, which is really smooth, but at the same time, it's not as aggressive. And also, it is not as fresh of a sound as this one, because we basically heard this one 1,000 times. The wave folding one is really interesting, but it sounds more digital to me. The texture one is really interesting, but it needs more processing on it because it sounds weak compared to the others. So the right amount of all the different techniques led me to this one. Now I'm going to show you a few examples from some of my tunes that use these type of sounds so you can hear them in context. This tune is called Spike, and as you're going to hear, it has that type of texture in the drop, and it sounds like this. So just to show you that this technique can be applied to any sound, not just sub-basses or basses in general, here's another tune of mine called Knock. And you can hear it in basically these chord stubs or pads. Knock. So as I've shown you, this is a technique that allows you to achieve really gritty and distorted sound in a non-conventional way. I just got different ideas from other artists and I've packed them together into what I think is a much more modern sound. If you find a way to do this with stock plugins, please let me know, because I'd love to make a rack that everyone can use and experiment with. So yeah, I guess we've finished with explaining you what noise layering asymmetrical distortion is, and let's hear more noises.